All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's the DtG Game Podcast. It's afternoon if you're watching in the UK on Twitch. It's morning in the US, and it's whatever it is wherever else you happen to be, anywhere else. So thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about some real-life football stuff and some football manager stuff. We'll be talking about the Premier League window just closed up, who you're excited about playing as in the upcoming FM20 game, and what roles you might hope to see implemented or tweaked a little bit in the next edition of the game at FM20, which should be coming out in fall. Pelham Carter is welcome to the podcast this month or this week. You can tell it's a little bit early in the U.S. I've got my coffee. I'm a little bit stammering, but I will be all right. I promise.
You'll be fine. Just get more caffeine in you.
I'm going to get more caffeine in me.
Some as well.
I got some right here. I'll trudge through it. I was up a little bit late watching Twitch last night. Actually, I was watching.
What were you watching on Twitch?
I was watching there's this radio show in the U.S. that I like a lot, and they were actually just went into their studio and had like a dance party, which was interesting. Like they like they basically just like DJ'd like a party out of their studio, and for some reason I was mesmerized by it.
Nice.
And I was maybe mesmerized. I might have been. I might have been mesmerized because they had a very attractive woman on there as a guest dancing. That might have had something to do with it. But
that could have been part of their plan all along.
I think it was absolutely part of their plan. I mean, they're smart. They're popular. But I said, well, let me just watch this for a little bit, and I ended up watching it until like midnight. And then other than that, I was sitting on my couch watching TikTok. Do you know what the TikTok is? Because we're both the old-timers here.
Yeah, we're the old ones, but TikTok's the kind of video syncing one, isn't it? Where you've got people singing in the background to different videos, or... No, that's not it, is it?
Well, you know what?
I can see your face on Twitch.
You're kinda there. It's basically like... you're able to like do short videos like Vine used to be, like funny videos, and people are really creative, and usually it's younger people. So I'm watching them and I'm like, this is pretty cool, and I got kind of sucked down that rabbit hole. Anyway, not to get to suck down the off-topic rabbit hole on the podcast. We of course had the big transfer window, which was I thought it was pretty exciting. I mean, I like that it's earlier now, which is nice because you're not waiting until the international window. But that
definitely helps.
Everybody's consensus that the big winners, and I don't know if you agree, were Arsenal this year.
I think they've done all right. It's like surprisingly well after like transfer window after transfer window of crushing disappointment. It was like a regular thing. You could sort of hear the tears of Arsenal fans every transfer window. Just for not doing much. But this window, they seem to have done all right.
Yeah, they spent a net of 82 million, but they got some really good players. I mean, Nicolas Pepe, Denny Ceballos, who I'm a big fan of actually at FM. David Luiz, I'm not really excited about that, but I am excited about Kieran Tierney.
Yeah, that should be a good one. The David Luiz one was a little bit odd. Like, I think he'll do all right for him, but it was, a little odd. But the Tierney one should be really good. If they're getting a lot of stick for the move.
Well, I mean, I get it. I mean, I get it and I don't. I mean, the kid, is a Celtic fan growing up. He was with the club since he was 15, and he wants to try something else. Like, I mean, I don't know. I grew up and I wanted to do a certain thing, and I did it for a little while. I did radio for a while, and then I decided I want to do something different. So I mean, people getting on your ass about changing your mind about what do you want to do or where you want to work. I mean, because that's basically what it is, right? I mean, he worked for somebody. He worked for somebody who he wanted to work for somebody else, and he decided to go ahead and get another job. I mean, people do that every day, all the time. Like, I don't know why it is that this kid, who was very, very faithful to, let's call it a job, for a while, that now he wants to try something else, and he's getting all this crap about it. I hope he does really well. I think he's a great talent, and I think that he's really going to do great things. Another big, if we're just looking at the Give Me Sport had put up a article about who they thought was the big winners actually in the transfer window. Of course, they have Arsenal first. They have Aston Villa second.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, they have Aston Villa second. Now, I mean, there's not a lot of people that I know about, but I mean, you could check out the article at Give Me Sport. It's a good article. They spent a lot of money. Matthew Targett, pretty good. Tyrone Mings. I mean, it seems like a bunch of people who are middle of the road players that have added something to the team that probably overall they're thinking is going to be really good. And I think a lot of people are excited about Aston Villa, come out. Now, this is one that I do agree with, that number 3, Tottenham Hotspur. They didn't have a whole bunch of activity, but the stuff that they did was really good.
Yeah, they had that kind of flurry, didn't they, towards the end? And they were, was it Dybala as well? They were almost linked to. It looked like there was going to be a bit of a coup right at the end.
Yeah.
Didn't quite come through, but is it Lo Celso?
Lo Celso, they only got him on a loan, but I'm really excited about him. Tanguy Ndombele, I don't know how I'm pronouncing that, but people are really excited about him from Lyon. I love Ryan Sessegnon. I think, in FM too, I love Ryan Sessegnon. I mean, he's one of those kids that ends up, no matter what save you play, he ends up being a good player for you down the road. They got him for $25 million from Fulham, and that is going to be a really good signing and kind of shore up that left side for them. So that number 3, Tottenham. West Ham, number 4. Again, not a whole bunch of interesting action, so I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Getting rid of Andy Carroll was a great move.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I don't know what Newcastle have done there, but well, that could go for anything Newcastle does, really.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily any sense at the moment. But,
no, I mean, it's like...
West Ham have done all right. They've spent a bit, but cleared the board as well. They've got a few people out they needed to get out.
Yeah, Paulo Fornells from Villarreal. That's a really good signing. I get that. Sebastian Haller, I'm not really familiar with him too much from the German league, but apparently he's very good.
He's good. They've spent big on him, though, haven't they? There's going to be a lot of pressure for, was it 45 million?
45 million, yeah.
And that's, I mean, I think he'll probably do well. I think West Ham are probably a bit more optimistic than they've got right to be, because I think with Wolves and Leicester doing all right as well, they might not perform as well as they want, but I think they'll be better this year.
Well, it's the London clubs, spending big, but I mean, I don't know necessarily. I mean, there's no big names in there, but
true. Then
again, of course, number 5. Manchester City, who haven't done a whole bunch, but their moves were awesome.
Yeah,
which is pretty much what they do. I mean, that's basically what Pep Guardiola teams do. I mean, they get maybe 2 or 3 people in that are just absolutely awesome, and they are going to make an impact.
Yeah, it's that kind of, like in FM terms, it's when you've got your team settled,
right,
and you know exactly what you need every transfer window. It's that kind of, they've got a plan.
Yeah, Rodri from Atletico Madrid, awesome midfielder, and João Cancelo from Juventus on the last day on the left side there. So I mean, they just go right ahead and fix any kind of leak that they might have in their team with 2 great signings. And Scott Carson, and bringing. I mean, it's interesting because people kind of was giving him a little bit of stick for being an older guy and stuff like that. But that's, I mean, there's a lot of young kids on the Manchester City team, and if they're looking for a guy who might be a real good player coach or a coach after he gets done playing, I think that's a good move.
Yeah, he's going to bring some experience, and I think there was a lot of on Twitter anyway, a lot of memes about it being, because they need a certain amount of homegrown players. They've just remembered on the transfer deadline day, so they've got Scott Carson in. But I think he's not going to do them any harm.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he's a good presence in net. I mean, he's not going to play a whole bunch, and maybe he's not there to play a whole bunch. He's there to kind of be a veteran presence on the team. So I think that they really did really well. And as a Liverpool fan, I don't know if Liverpool needed to do very much. I mean, I don't think Jurgen Klopp teams necessarily, are known for big splashy transfers. They're they're more known for building within, which is something that I like to do, especially on FM, is build from within. I don't like the big flashy transfers because it messes up chemistry a lot of times. But they didn't do very much. So, now I am thinking, well, how is it going to matter and shake out for the Premier League coming up, this next year? Before I go on to that, though, an honorable mention to Everton.
Yeah.
I'm
quite impressed, actually.
I was really happy with, because Ryan is not on this week, but Ryan's an Everton fan, and I am really impressed with what they did, because they brought in some who I think are really good players. And another move that I was really happy. And actually, by the way, there was an article that I wrote this week for DictateTheGame.com. Excuse me, which you can which you can get online right now, about the top or the 5 teams that I'm really excited about playing as coming up in the next edition of the game, and Everton was one of them. Because
it's a good choice as well, I think.
I mean, there are bad.
If you've got Keane, Delph, Gomez, Iwobi as well. I mean, they've spent a lot of money.
58.5.
Because we're the old timers. I remember playing, is it Football Manager 97 or 99? Not Football Manager, Championship Manager. And Everton always used to be in like a financial crisis where they'd have to shut down the stands because they couldn't afford the upkeep. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And I think after seasons and seasons of like Moyes spending the bare minimum where he could, it's a real it's a shock to the system for me to see them spending that much. But they've spent well, I think. Yeah,
they're spending really smart. I mean, like we were talking about, Scott Carson kind of joking that he's that veteran presence. Fabian Delph really is. I mean, Fabian Delph is going to help them a lot. Like that's for me. That and Keane are probably their best 2 signings. I mean, and it would be 1 and 1A. I mean, getting Fabian Delph, as well as he played at his age for, $8.5 million from Manchester City, that's a really, really good deal.
Yeah, that's the kind of FM deal that you brag about, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Moise Keane is great. Finalizing Andre Gomes from Barcelona is a really good move. I'm not sure about the Iwobi move. I mean, I think maybe a change of scenery will make him better than he seems to be, but paying 35 for Alex Iwobi on the last day, I don't know how great that was.
That did feel a little bit kind of they've overspent because it's the last day.
Yeah.
If there'd been another week of the window, they might still have got him, but not for 35.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's probably other people out there, but it was, it's not a bad move. I don't think. I mean, it's to be seen. I mean, he's really only scored, 3 goals the last season. I think 2 goals the season before that and 2 goals the season before that. So it's not like he's setting the world on fire, but it depends on how you want to use him, right? So, I mean, if you want to use him as a goal scorer, that's not what you're buying. If you want to use him as a facilitator or somebody who can shore up, one side of the field on the wing and kind of make the structure of your team better overall.
Yeah, and we said they've spent a lot, but they've also sold a reasonable amount as well. I've finally found that article on Give Me Sport. They've, what's it? Lookman went for 18 million.
Yep. Idrissa Gueye went from 30. Yeah.
So they've not quite balanced the books, but they're not far off, are they? They're.
No, it's shrewd. It's shrewd spending. I mean, it's good spending. I mean, it's the kind of spending on FM that if you're, this is to me, this is a textbook transfer window for like an FM type game where you don't have all the money in the world.
Yeah, shift them out first.
Yeah,
get the new ones in.
Yeah, I mean, if you got 60 million to spend, that's pretty middle of the road in the Premier League in the game. Yeah. So if you're able to make that kind of business and net spend 60 million, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's the key to it, and it's as entertaining as football is, it's still definitely a business now. It's such a huge side of it, and you see some clubs spending big because they're gambling on getting the prize money, on getting into Europe, and then you've got others who are. I think Everton's been, they've been sensible and improved at the same time. So I would have put them higher up actually on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I would have put it's hard. So going over the top, I would have probably put them in West Ham space.
Yeah,
I would have swapped West Ham. So. I would have swapped West Ham in them because I really do think that Everton did. Because if you're just tuning in, we had Arsenal number 1 based on this article, number 2 Aston Villa, number 3 Tottenham Hotspur. Number 4, West Ham, and this is an article that from Give Me Sport that bases the top 5 it ranks every single team based on their transfer window. It gave Manchester City number 5 and 6 to Everton. So I think I'd put Everton in the top 5. I think they did a great bit of business.
Yeah, I think that'd be fair.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how they do this season now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's interesting because I think that I think Everton definitely improved. But what do you think about the top 6? I mean, who do you think is going to be there at the end of the year? Does what people did business-wise in the transfer window really change where you think they're going to be at the end of the year?
I think it's that kind of value-added thing. So I think there's an already pretty strong top 6. In fact, the top kind of 4 from last season's especially strong. So I think there'll be a little bit of movement. So I think Everton and Wolves might be a bit higher up than they were last season, but I still think Man City, Liverpool, Tottenham are going to be the top 3.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think that gap with Tottenham's going to be closed a little bit. And what about Arsenal? I mean, Arsenal did a good bit of business. I mean, Arsenal, absolutely, without a doubt, I believe that they had the number 1 transfer window.
They have done well. It's just they were so far off the pace last season. Like, they were never, for me anyway, they were never particularly convincing. At no point did I ever think they were actually going to put in a real challenge that was going to last in kind of any of the competitions, even though, they did do reasonably well. So I don't know if that really good transfer window is enough to push them into that kind of top 3, maybe 4, get the fourth spot. 'Cause I don't think Chelsea will get it.
No,
I'll be surprised if they do.
No, and I mean, so it's interesting because, and also another team that we're not talking about at all is Manchester United.
Yeah.
Which is so strange, especially, because this is basically the this is basically the Dictate the Game Old Timers podcast today with me and Pelham. Yeah. And I remember where it was just almost boring, to watch the Premier League because you knew that Manchester United was going to just dominate every single year.
It's a thing when everyone was just talking about there being a top 2 at best. It was Manchester United and someone else, whether that was Arsenal for a bit, whether it was Chelsea. I think now the fact we can talk about a top 6, that's pretty good. That means it's much more competitive at that end. I do think the gap in the middle is getting bigger, but it's a lot more interesting now.
Well, of course, we have, it's early in the morning. Well, we're recording at noon on Saturday, British Standard Time, so we're about ready for some football after this anyway. The Premier League is back, so it's really exciting. And another exciting thing, if you haven't checked it out this couple of weeks, is the new website that we have at DictateTheGame.com. So let me just show you a little bit about that. Very beautiful layout, very, very cool. If you haven't checked it out, the brand new DictateTheGame.com is, of course, at DictateTheGame.com. We have guides for you, experiments. We have all kinds of stories that we work with. We have some off-topic stuff like the podcast, and just wanting to be able to give you a little bit of everything at DictateTheGame.com. We have the podcast every single Sunday. We have website articles on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. There'll be a store coming pretty soon. DictateTheGame.com is really blowing up, and we want you to check it out. DictateTheGame.com, everything you want to know about a football manager and what's coming up. A lot of that going on right now, which we'll talk about next, what's coming up for the next edition of the game and, the next really 3 or 4 months. But now that football's back, we're going to have a lot more to, frankly, talk about on the podcast. But you can check it out at DictateTheGame.com. New articles Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. DictateTheGame.com. So one of the articles, actually really 2 of the articles that we had at DictateTheGame.com this past week had to do with teams that you're looking to get involved with and play with coming up in the next edition of the game. On Monday, we did the 5 teams that we can't wait to play in Football Manager 2020, which for me, and it was my article, so it was for me. So in what we're talking about.
It's a good one.
Yeah, but just for me, and I'll see if you agree or not. So we're talking about. I am excited really about these 5 teams in FM20 the most. I really want to play as Inter Milan. I want to play as Manchester United because I think it's a challenge actually this year. Everton's in there. Real Madrid's going to be really interesting because I love Zidane is one of my favorite players of all time, and we talk about the FM old timers, right? If you guys haven't, if you really haven't seen Zidane play, you maybe heard about the headbutt, you've heard about, but if you haven't seen him play and you're a younger guy, go to YouTube and check out Zidane clips. He was absolutely phenomenal to watch play.
Yeah, you'll go down like a rabbit hole of top 10 clips and goals and skills and things like that. He's well worth the watch. Yeah, you will say, wow, that guy was really that great. Because he doesn't look like a... he doesn't look like, your prototypical pretty boy, football player.
He's a little bit stocky.
Yeah.
He's got, most of the time, he was balding and didn't shave his head. He just looked kind of like, he looked kind of like an old timer standing there playing. But his skill level was absolutely incredible. And what he's done at Real Madrid now this year is basically said, last year, if I'm going to come back, then you're going to give me complete control of what goes on.
Yeah, which I think is what he needed to do. That's a good move.
Yeah, I don't care. He's like, and he got it too. That's the amazing thing about it. He's like, I don't care what you think about what I'm doing. You're not going to say a thing about it, and you're going to let me do it.
Yeah, which is bizarre in this kind of current climate, with the change with all the kind of director of football roles and, just moving the kind of transfer side of it out of the manager's hands a lot more. It's kind of unheard of for a club that size to give away that amount of control. Because, again, they're a business. It's all about their bottom line. Any mistake he makes was going to cost them. So there's a lot of faith in what you can do for them to allow him to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, but he's a guy that should be believed in. I mean, it was interesting to me the way he left anyway, because you win 2 out of 3 years Champions League. You win the Champions League 2 out of 3 years, and then basically he says, "This is a team that they're not going to put enough money into for me. I'm not going to coach," and leaves.
Yeah,
and and publicly does it. So I mean, it's kind of that drama, and that didn't get talked about as much as I think it should have been talked about. I think it got talked about in Spain a lot about that decision that he made, but that was a very gutsy decision to just say, you know what, see you later. This is the biggest club, arguably, in the world, but you're not going to do what I want you to do. So see you later. Yeah,
it's a big thing to walk away from, just for the kind of day-to-day side. We're talking about football being a job. There's not much in the way of bigger paydays job-wise to just turn your back on and walk away for the principle of wanting that kind of control. So he stuck to his guns for that one.
Yep, and it turned out that they went through they went to Lopetegui and they went to Solari and they said, you know what, what is that you wanted again? And he goes, everything, and they said, okay, you can have it. So
it's got to be so satisfying.
Yeah, well, and he's changed that club so much. It's gonna be really, really exciting to play as in Football Manager 2020, and Chelsea is going to be now. If you want a challenge, I think this is going to be a good challenge in the game, because this is going to be, you're going to need to be a good manager to do well with Chelsea in Football Manager 2020, because it's not going to be going out and spending a lot of money. It's going to be managing a team that you have in what's going on.
It's going to be a real test.
It's going to be a real test. So, I mean, it's going to be a really fun team to play as. And being an American, I'm excited about how well Christian Pulisic has been doing in the preseason, and I'm excited to see, because if Christian Pulisic, an American, can go in there and kind of save this Chelsea team, I'm going to take, a little bit of a, more excitement in that.
Full credit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, not credit, because it's funny. We've had people on the podcast that were saying, hey, I don't think he's going to do that well, and I
remember that.
And Chelsea's not, really a team that invest so much in youth, but now they're going to need to. And if Lampard this is going to be a real test to see if Lampard is really a good coach or he's a big name. Because if Lampard can do well with this limited this limit, I mean, he's got a limit. You can't bring players in. I mean, I don't know if they've appealed it or not. I don't know what's going to end up happening, but they can't really do anything. Now anyway, they haven't really done anything.
I think they did appeal, but I don't know whether that appeal's actually been dealt with or whether it's just fallen flat. But I think they're basically preparing as if the appeal's not going to go through.
Yeah, I mean, they really haven't. I mean, looking through again, we try to see. I mean, they brought in Pulisic, but I mean, in the window, they didn't do anything. I mean, they finalized the Mateo Kovacic deal in the transfer window.
Yeah. It's not much else, really, is
No,
it?
not much. Well, I'm going back to the article we were talking about. I mean, they made a profit of $173 million.
Not bad.
No, not bad at all. And they brought in Mateo, but they didn't bring in anybody else. They got rid of Louise, Drinkwater, Cahill, Green, Hazard. Wow, these are big names. Murata, I mean, Jesus. Like this is tough. Mm-hmm. This is going to be tough.
Yeah. I think it's not just managing like a team full of young players. That'll be the challenge on FM as well. It's the kind of expectations and the morale. Because there's always huge kind of like morale issues, players wanting to make sure they're playing in the right competitions. And because Chelsea's reputation is so good, because it's so high, if you're not hitting those targets really early on, the game's going to get tougher and tougher. And I think it'll be the same in real life for Lampard. He'll get a certain amount of leeway because of the situation. But if he's not making headway, if he's too far off the pace, the players are going to get unhappy, just like the FM versions of them. So it's going to be a lot of juggling and a lot of kind of ego soothing as well for some of them, the ones that have stayed. So I think they're the toughest challenge. From your article, I think they're the ones I'm drawn to the most. Them and Everton, for me. But I think they're probably the toughest challenge out of your selection.
Well, and there was another article that Guy, Mr. Moneyball himself, had put out on Friday about the best teams to play in the EFL, which is always something that I like to do. I like to bring a team up and see how we could do there. But you can check that out too. But speaking of FM, is the new game is going to be coming out. I think it's tracked to come out either the 1st or the 8th of November this year, from rumors. And I haven't heard too much. I mean, because they haven't released too much in the way of changes to the game this year, but I mean, there are a couple of roles that I would love to see changed a little bit to reflect what's going on, more in real life football this year. One of which I would love to see tweaked a little bit is the libero role, because I love that role, but I don't think I think it's being used as more of a sweeper role, not necessarily a libero the way that in the olden days, Beckenbauer would use it, and the way that Frankie de Jong was using it. This year for Ajax, because that's the one that I was really thinking about when it changed, to be able to almost have it, I don't know what you would call it, a libero-type role for a halfback that's a playmaker. So have your halfback be able to drop way deep in the line, or go to the side of your two center backs like they did at Ajax this year and dictate the play out of that. So really build out of the back that year. I would love to see that as a change.
I think, I'm with that as well, actually.
And I mean, I think that's going to be, that would be a great. Also, for me, this is not so much a role, but this is more of a kind of a match engine thing, I guess. I would love to see. I'm a big fan of Jose Mourinho, and I've never been able to replicate kind of that chain link effect on the back line. So where, in the old days where you have your winger release and play all the way up, but at the same time your back line, your right back or left back, shifts into a back three to be able to cover. So really it's a false fullback. It's really hanging out. So you're able to really shift your line and create a completely different formation that way. I've had a really hard time replicating that in the game.
I think that might be a general issue.
So I would definitely love to see something like that, to be able to shift and make sure that you can maybe more effectively shift your formations in general, because there's an idea, because they've really broken down the 3 phases of the game this past edition, which I think is great. I think they did a really good job doing that. I think it's really enjoyable to create tactics, and I like to do tactical replications, so it's really easier for me to be able to take it step by step and phase by phase and kind of do it that way. But I would love to see more control over formation in those phases.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I agree with all that. So with the libero stuff, I think they tweaked the role for FM19. So I think it used to be positionally, you'd put the libero behind the defence, so behind your central defenders, and now I think they've got to be in between two. So having a bit more control over that would be good. And I think you're right about the general kind of positioning. So those 3 phases are really good. I think for me, that's made the whole tactical side of the game so much more intuitive. And it's meant I've been able to have a lot more control over what I've done, the kind of stuff I've changed, even if I've not tried that many different things. It's made me feel more in control of that. But I think you're right about the kind of defensive positioning. So having someone push up and then having someone else drop back, I think is a lot harder to actually do in the game. And I know in the older versions of Championship Manager, Tactics had the with the ball and the without the ball screens, and you could select kind of each section of the pitch. So you'd have a square for each section of the pitch, and you could say where you wanted the players to be if the ball was in that section, when you had the ball and when you didn't have the ball. So it's called Wib-Wob, with and without the ball, Wib-Wob tactics, which got massively exploited. But if we had something kind of halfway between that, you could have that kind of control over. We say, well, if the ball's here and we've got it, then on the left-hand side, then I want to make sure my right back or my right winger is dropping back into this position. You could have that kind of just finer detailed control of the movement. Because for me, one of the roles I wanted to see, and I think might appear in the game, is the overlapping centre-backs that Sheffield United play with. And you can't really do that in the game because you don't have that control over the positioning. It's really, really tricky to get that actually in. In fact, I think there was a thread about it, or some Twitter comments from Cleon about it, about how it just can't be done. Because it's not just that they overlap, it's the fact that when you've got the ball, your centre-backs are actually really high up the pitch and they might be on the edge of the opposition's penalty area. But there's no way of doing that within the controls we've got. And I don't think we want to go back to the kind of... Again, I think we might be showing our age a lot in this podcast. But the earlier sort of football managers where they had the slider system.
Oh, yeah.
And lots of the tactics were like, go 17 notches up. And then for the next option, just make sure you're 2 to the left or whatever. So I don't want that kind of game-breaking control. But I think, you're right, having more control over that kind of positioning, especially for defence, would be really good. Because that's where, personally for me, I really struggle tactically with the defensive side of things. Just getting them to keep the shape I want. They'll have some kind of shape, it's just not the shape I want. So yeah, I agree with you with that. Just more control of the without the ball positioning for the other players, whether you're in possession or not, would be pretty good.
Well, and I really the reason I kind of fell in love with the game was because of the realism and the depth of it. And I think now, the way that the game has gone, it really is more about positional, I want to say positional discipline. In a way to say, this is where you play. When this is happening, this is where you play on the field. This is what I want you to do when this situation is happening. And like if you look at Manchester City and Pep Guardiola and all of his teams. I mean, his team's shape is very, very different. In different phases of the game, but it's very disciplined. So to be able to say, hey, and the way to create that now is in FM is through fluidity. So really you have to generalize your players to be able to get them to do that many different kind of motions on the pitch, but really what you want them to do is the opposite. You want them to be ultimately disciplined in different phases of the game and not so fluid. Really, Pep Guardiola's system is not a fluid one to me. It's very, very regimented. But the only way to replicate it in FM is to really generalize your players to the point where they're just kind of doing, really, basic stuff in different areas of the pitch, but you really want them to be doing ultra specific things.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to a player role situation, I think. So the way to achieve that is to have advanced player roles or player instructions in the game.
I think so, or just some blank templates. Just having a few players sort of without any instructions that you can then tweak in the way you want them to. Because I think pretty much every role comes with a set of predefined instructions they can have and some that they have to have. So it would be good occasionally you could just have like that right back, just blank role where you can actually use the full set of instructions to get different kind of movement out of them, for example.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a really good idea, to be able to, so kind of more advanced player instructions on a blank slate.
Yeah, and I think it'll get, if that ever happened, it'd get exploited. But it's worth having as well, I think, just so you can actually get those dots moving around the way you want them to move around.
And that's it, really, isn't it? It's for how many years have you been trying to get those dots to move around the way you wanted to move around?
Yeah, and you can't shout at them. You can, but they don't listen.
Yeah, they don't listen. That's the problem. Well, yeah, the problem is that all the instructions that I'm giving out loud in my games are perfect, but they're just not listening.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd won the Champions League by now.
Yeah, right. I'd be a real life manager by now, with my brilliance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, as
it's unlocked potential.
Yeah, as evidenced by how well I'm doing in the DtG Writers Cup. And by the way, you and I have a match to play this week, which yes, we do. We're the last people who haven't played in our group, I think.
Yeah, best to last.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a good game.
Yeah, have you seen the last 2 games that I played?
I saw the one against Guy.
Yeah.
I remember the keeper assist.
Yeah, watch the one against Sam on the YouTube channel and see how confident you are that it's going to be a good game after that, because I think I'm going to get absolutely trashed. So thank you very much for being on the podcast this week. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I think that we got some good stuff coming up for the next edition of the game. I think I'm really excited about it. This is the time that I start to get really excited. And are you going to be able to camp out and watch football this weekend? That's the big question.
I don't think I'm going to be allowed to.
Oh, no.
I think I'm going to be forced into the garden.
Oh,
that's all right, because I support Huddersfield anyway. They've already played. They played badly. So it's...
and that's all right. And that's another thing with the Old Timers show, is we got to talk about the things we have to do for our wives this weekend. We can't just sit around like you young guys.
Yeah, the promises and compromises that have been made.
Yeah. All right, man. You have a good week. We'll talk to you this week. We're going to see if we can get that match between you and I, as much as I fear what's going to happen, up on the YouTube channel. We'll get it up on the YouTube channel for people, and so they can at least see, the carnage that ensues.
It's going to be a good one. Everyone should watch it. Pepe's set for hard tackling.
Oh, God. Here we go. All right. Thank you very much, Pelham. We appreciate it. We'll talk to everybody next week. DictateTheGame.com for everything you want football and Football Manager. Have a great week, everybody.